an absolutely incredible tenor and singer. He was my vocal ped professor. He was also chair of our department and then also dean of our music school for a while. And I brought him in and I'm like, this is the best guy to talk about vocal pedagogy. And for those of you who haven't had a lot of vocal pedagogy or are like instrumentalists who are teaching elementary, they came back and go, can we go to very basic? So we went a little more basic this year to make sure everybody is just on the same page. In order to make sure we're doing the best thing we possibly can for our students and our singers. And as you've been hearing me say so many times, I don't dumb things down, no matter if it's a kindergartner or a first grader that I'm working with or a college student. And really, you know, that really came to me when Laura and I had kids. And, you know, we're teaching them about their anatomy and their body parts and stuff. And we're not like, hey, this weird long thing that's attached to your body here, we call it an arm. We call the bones what they are. And this is a hand. And yet at the same time, when we talk about vocal pedagogy and the voice, we don't tend to do that. You know, we use gimmicks and tricks, and those are good because we're trying to get a muscle to react and muscle memory. But at the same time, why not label it so that later on they already know it? And that's always been my thing when I was teaching elementary school. And at one point, you know, a teacher referred to me as their prep time. And I was like, oh, no. I am not your prep time. You know, I am teaching art and art form, and I am teaching just as relevant a thing as you are. And it's very funny when teachers were experiencing something with their voice, vocal fatigue, when they were getting sick, they didn't go to the nurse. They actually came down and saw me most of the time and go, I feel something. Do you know what's going on in here? Because they knew I mean, this is the part of the body where I really know my stuff is right here, right? And we as teachers need to relay that to our students and to our parents. Because when a kid goes home and is able to say these things to the parents go, oh, wow, that's a really good teacher you've got there. I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what happened there. So always remember that as you're teaching them and let them know what is happening. So I looked through the Teams chat and detailed and concise. So thank you, Kristen, and Laura put great refresher. Do you have questions or things you want to talk about a little, maybe expand upon? You know, with so many of these videos, I was telling Lauren when I was creating them and writing the plans and PowerPoints and stuff in this, all of this goes together. You know, one thing flows into another video because this is the art. It's not siloed. It all works together. These are all pieces to the puzzle that we're putting together to make the best art possible for our singers. And in preparing all of this, I think I've said to some of you too in these live sessions, you know, it makes me think about the spread of COVID for singers. And I have my own thoughts on it. And, you know, we're backing it up with research and all of that stuff. But, you know, in talking about this basic fundamental of singing, what your diaphragm is doing is very different than when you cough or sneeze. And those are the things we're most, you know, scared about, a cough or a sneeze, because it's your diaphragm punching up basically, and expelling that air. And whereas singing, as I've said before, is controlled breath. And we get the sound that we get because of using resonance, because of using space and the mask. And so when we use a mask facial mask, as in the covering, not this mask, when we use that, are we able to really protect one another? As many of us know, singing also had the worst label slapped on it as a super spreader because of what happened out in Washington State, what happened over in Germany. But if you really look at these aren't case studies of people wearing masks, social distance, came in socially distanced. No, these were normal rehearsals. These people were not social distance. They were sitting next to each other. They had no masks. They hugged. They shook hands. Some of them ate meals together. We know those for a fact because those people told us those things. So just to remember that when we talk apples, when we talk about research, we want apples and apples, not apples and pineapples. We really need to look at things as they are. So that we can give the best information. And that's, as many of you know, we put together our COVID handbook and what we're doing with the Indianapolis Children's Choir because of these things, because of really looking at details. And so what a singer is able to do. And it's really interesting, Ruth Dwyer, our director of education, she said, I'm not as scared to stand in front of a group of kids singing because I'm still teaching them breath support. I'm still teaching them those things. I don't think they're going to expel as much air as, a group of high school students in front of me. I mean, we have to look also developmentally where we are and what is there. So that's not totally on vocal pedagogy, but because of really looking at it and really looking at this mechanism too. The other thing with a cough and a sneeze is your vocal folds open and everything comes out, right? With singing, your vocal folds are still meeting, not letting all the air escape, right? It's vibrating the vocal folds. So there's a lot to think about. And we know that there's research being done in Colorado right now. There's also research being done in England right now. I was just reading on The Guardian about that. And how they're having people sing into this funnel, and it's looking at the aerosols that really do come out of singing. So we just need to be aware of all of that, but also being able to talk to our parents, being able to talk to our administrators about what we know as professionals, because this area where the virus lives, this is our world. This is what we know. This is what we study constantly and are always looking at. Do I know when they'll complete the Colorado study? They said by the end of the month. I have heard both July 25th and July 27th floated out there. I do know that they are done with instruments at this point in time, and that is available. And Anna, I see you put in there, interesting to cough, sneeze on your arm versus singing. Yeah, there was just not a professional study. It was done by a voice teacher. Very, very interesting video. I'll see if I can get it off of my Facebook and give it to Lauren to put in the resource area. But a singer took a match and put it in front of her mouth and, moved it to where it went out. Did it with a mask on, and it never wavered. And then she coughed and sneezed, and the match went out right away. And it's just it's those types of things that yes, we want to take as many precautions as we possibly can, but it's also realizing how we expel air and what it is and how it moves. So those are all interesting things for us to look at. So vocal pedagogy, talking about this area. Questions, comments, things we want to share today. Lauren said you guys were getting chatty, and we really like that. So if you have something, shoot it out there, and then we'll all take part. I see Kristen reaching out. Maybe she's got something. No. Hey, Mrs. Southard, they're all very quiet. Either this was really good or we bombed on this one.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
This was my first introduction to vocal pedagogy, and it honestly blew my mind. And
this is Paula,
like,
right?
Man, we've been doing, yes, this is Paula Jordan in Eureka, California. I felt like, wow, we've been doing everything wrong, and what you really got me at was most people get the breath part and kind of up to the soft palate a little bit and then get stuck on the placement. And I was trying to do it myself, like try to sing along with the video. And I'm going, for myself, I'm not even sure I understand that. So could you maybe explain a little bit more how you would explain the feeling of the placement and how you were talking about that you get it up into your soft palate and then it has to go a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
I was still like, this is mind boggling, but if I don't totally understand it, there's no way I'm going to be able to teach it.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's a big time of experimenting and trying and feeling it, because it is all muscle memory and a sensation. And that's one of the things that for me was an interesting journey. So I'm a baritone, and my voice teacher in college loved working with him. He always called it like a baritone snarl. You know, we have baritones tend to have a little more forward placement. We're not the tenors that it's like the tenor just kind of comes out the eyes, that sound. But it had to have clarity to it. And one of the things that really, and I don't remember if I talked about this in the tone production, so forgive me if I repeat some stuff, is my feeling on placement changed when I went over and worked with David Flood over at Canterbury. And it was interesting because Henry said to me at one point, he's like, your position on placement has changed one summer when we came back from retreat. And after I'd been over there and worked with David, I said, yeah. And he said, well, why? And I said, well, that summer I'd gone back and I'd listened to a lot of recordings by the Indianapolis Children's Choir. And I said, I thought the sound was beautiful. I thought it was a beautiful sound. He said, but I didn't understand any of the words. If I didn't know the song, I didn't understand the words. And that's why we're singing. And he's like, yeah, I agree with you. And my position on placement is changing. And that's the thing with placement. And Arlene, can you remind me what word you used? You didn't use placement. You used another word, and I liked it, and I forgot to write it down.
We sing in a space. Like all the vowels are shaped in a space.
Yeah.
And that space really, it's very natural space, honestly, when we're working. It's much more in the spoken space. Right. But I don't talk about placement because I find that with my singers, they have a tendency of holding.
They get it stuck right there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is a great space on this note, but then when they go higher, they want to keep it in that same space and they don't want to accommodate for the height that they need. Exactly. Yeah. So we talk about the space in which it's formed.
That's awesome. And so Paula, one of the things, what grade levels are you working with, Paula?
That's kind of a loaded question. I actually haven't, I taught younger choir for a while. I haven't in the last couple of years, but I'm still involved with the people who are actually standing there in front of the choir. Yeah. So it's more like we're all part of a team and we're collaborating together.
Yeah. So with the younger kids, singers, they tend to model whatever the director is giving them. You're the vocal reflection. Mm-hmm. So if you have a tone that's pulled back, they're going to model that. They don't understand what's going on totally with the mechanism. They're just modeling. And the more you model for them and they create that, then you start to label once they do, right? So you don't have to teach a kindergartner all that. You just want to give them a good model that they'll emulate. And then you start to build off of. So you feel this here or this here, that's your soft palate. Now you want to keep it up here, it's going to go forward, always that forward feeling. The sound is always moving forward and not backwards. And like Arlene said, that space, singing up here in the space. For me, I always told like my singers to try and get them to think this way. it was a trick that my voice teacher had used with me, and it was to take my tongue and put it on my hard palate right behind my teeth as it starts to go up right there, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so you click on the roof of your mouth right there. And I said, okay, now, right where your tongue is, right there, there's a little hole right there, okay? That little hole is the sound now that the place where your sound's gonna go through. So you're not gonna go, it's not gonna come up and out and go this way now. It's gonna come up and out and go that way, right? It's not gonna go through your mouth. It's gonna go through that little hole. So if you think of aiming through that hole, what would it be like? And all of a sudden, that just brought the sound from being here, oh, to, oh. All of a sudden they were like, oh, I gotta go that way, right? And so that's, I love everybody on this clicking now. The trick with your kids is to say, you're gonna click right on the roof of your mouth. Ready? We're gonna do 3 of them together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. No more. None. No more of that. But like Arlene said, then you need to use the rest of the space. So if you sing a really good here, but that's here. It's not here, it's here, right? And so to be able to say it's a whole space, and you have to utilize that space. But part of it is to experiment and feel it, right? You have to feel it and feel the sensation. And that's the biggest thing. Like you have to be able to understand what you're going to teach. So you have to be able to say, it's going to feel this way, because it is muscle memory. Like, it's not a trumpet. I was a trumpet player. I was a brass player, played French horn and trombone and stuff. And, it's not like push down the first valve and adjust your embouchure a little bit, and now you're going to get the D instead of the F. It's not that. We can't see any of the mechanism. It is all feeling. And so that's the biggest thing with it. But your younger singers, you need to do the best modeling possible for the sound you want, and then you label it as you go. As they grow into it, you label it, right? So so how old is your baby?
She is 6 months.
6 months. All right. So my youngest daughter just turned 1. All right. So anyway, she's learning right now. You're modeling certain things for her. Later on, as she's older, when she understands it, you'll label it. But for right now, she's just learning it. And that's the same thing with singing. We teach it, and then we'll label as they go on. So, you've got all the tools. Don't worry, you're there. You're totally there. Great question.
I also had a question. I actually
and Jenny, how old is your daughter? Is that?
Oh, yeah, she is 1 year and 4 months as of the other day. Say hi. My question was, that was so amazing, and I'm very new to it. Paula and I actually work together on things. But with the younger ones, and even with the older ones, the tone production versus the volume, like, it seems like once we go to volume, the tone, like,
go away.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, like, even what you said with doing the tongue up there and getting that placement right, is there any other ways, or do you just sacrifice the volume for a little bit till the tone production's there?
I sacrifice the volume. I can remember when I went to a conference, and I was doing their children's choir, and the conference directors came up to me, and they just said, they need to sing louder. And I said, actually, I'm sorry, that's not appropriate for them. They're doing what is age appropriate for them. I said, if you want it louder, get a mic. We'll mic them then. Because I wasn't going to sacrifice their tone and their sound for a shout that they wanted, and that's the other thing. A lot of people don't have good children's choir models. They don't have that sound of what young kids should sing like. What most kids hear is singing in a chest voice, not in their head voice, in their light voice. And so we have to remember that a chest voice is going to create a bigger sound than the head voice is, right? And so we have to realize that. And as with our singers and our parents, you know, they're going to, why isn't their sound bigger? Well, because in the bel canto style, it is again a journey. They're on a journey, and the voice is going to grow along that journey. And so we have to really watch that and make sure we're doing what is appropriate for them. So yes, I sacrifice volume for the tone. Keep the tone beautiful, keep it light, keep it without tension, and then give it good breath support. And I saw in here, and I didn't get to it, Laura asked, with kindergartners, with breath support, how do you teach that? Well, it's just like when you saw us working with the summer camp kids. We start with that breathing, right? Lifting your arms up and pushing it out. Shh, and breathing in again. And the S, and the feeling, the expansion. They all feel that. They got that. My son is in kindergarten. He's got that. And then explaining that to him. And okay, we're going to take in a good breath. And when they go like this, you stop them. Nope, that's not a good breath. Are your lungs up here? No, our lungs aren't up there. You know, good. Where are your lungs? Oh, they're down here. Okay, put your hand down there. Now breathe in with me. Okay, now out. You know, and practice the breath with them. We take breathing for granted because we do it every day. It's like speaking English, right? We take that for granted. When we breathe in our normal daily life, we actually breathe from the upper chest. We don't take in deep breaths. And it's funny, I don't know if I mentioned this in the video, but like when I go to a doctor and they say, take in a deep breath, and I'm still breathing in, and they've moved to the other side, my other lung, and I'm like, I'm not done. They're like, why aren't you done? I'm like, I'm a singer. I'm a professional breather. Like, this is what I do, right? So that goes to show when even a doctor says to someone, take in a deep breath, they're done in 2 seconds. Why? Because they only breathe up here. They aren't taking in a truly deep breath because they don't do it. People don't do that. So doing simple breathing exercises will help with that. And then Jenny, that breathing will help with the tone. And as long as it's energized and nice and rich, you're going to get a really good tone. But don't ever sacrifice tone for volume. Don't do it. Not worth it.
I have a question kind of spinning off on that.
Yes.
In our 1st through 3rd grade choir, so about 7 to 11-year-olds, we will be singing, say, a Broadway kind of a song. Like we did Swinging on a Star last year. And to get them doing a nice forward resonant sound, we had them warm up with like, my, or that. But then as soon as we bring in those kind of forward warm-ups, they go to kind of like the happy birthday mode, my, and it becomes really back and wide. And it's kind of natural, but do you have anything where they can feel the difference between that happy birthday mode and just more forward, bright sound?
So part of that is this, right?
Uh-huh.
My. So it's this. It's the feeling of this. That really boils down to the lips. And they've got to get used to that, you know. V V V V V V V V V V V V V V V V. That has nothing to that change in that sound you just heard has nothing to do with placement. It only had to do with my lips, right?
Wow,
and so
yeah.
So it's really some of that. So whenever you're doing those things, put up guides. You know, we use our fingers. Sometimes we do this. Sometimes we do this. If you ever do this, please don't push. You know what is that Home Alone thing? Don't push, because you want this to be really relaxed, right? So we always tend to use the back of our hands, right, or fingers, railroad tracks we call them. But really that for more pop music, you want a brighter sound. You know, Swinging on a Star was sung by Bing Crosby. He's a crooner. You know, his sound wasn't totally really bright. It was sort of just, I mean, he's a baritone like me, you know. Would you like to swing on a star it's a lighter sound too. And to create that, but it's this. And the happy birthday to you syndrome is also with the mouth, because we don't go around talking to people like this. Hello, how are you today? I hope you're enjoying our session on vocal pedagogy. If we did that, everyone would run the other way and be like, that person's a freak, right? We talk wide. And so the retraining of that, and especially when you get to a pop song, and if they know the pop song is really bad, because they are going to go to the happy birthday to you syndrome because they know it, and this is how they've sung it. It goes this way.
It's exciting.
Exactly. So you're doing the right thing with doing warm-ups that bring it forward. E's are really good. Yeah. That bringing it there and really getting it placed in that space here is really important. Anything that brings it forward, not that back feeling. So always forward feeling. But yeah, you're doing the exact right thing. I would say the biggest culprit probably from what you demonstrated to me is mouth. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. If I may,
did you say it's primarily in the men? Did you say that?
I didn't. I was gonna say if I may, when we tell them to bring the lips forward, a lot of times, since they're so little people pleasers, then we end up with like the face tension too, because then all of a sudden they're like my, and it gets really tight that way. So is there?
Well, they have to realize it's relaxed. It's relaxed. It's really the look that they give their parents so often when their parents say something and they go. That's the shape of their lip. Their lip should be. Why? Because it's relaxed. It is in a neutral position. When we say it's in a circle, that is changing it. But if you're like, it used to be you could just say, like, who was it? Homer Simpson or whatever. That's the mouth right there. That's what you want. And you want it to be very, very relaxed. So that's the other thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anna Moody said, yeah, instruments have built-in resonators, but the singers have to create it. Yeah, because we have to open the space. We have to keep the space open. And part of the biggest thing is our soft palate. We speak with our soft palate down, which is one of our biggest spaces, big spaces. And we have to lift. We have to lift the soft palate, which we don't do. Talk more about modeling for the younger singers, but also how to teach and incorporate vocal pedagogy in correct terms while teaching younger grades. So with younger grades, from myself personally, Lauren can speak into this because she does our preschoolers. As I said, you teach first and you label second. Again, we are also not only Orff Schulwerk trained, but we're also Kodai trained. So it's prepare, present, practice is the world we live in. And so when they're younger, we're preparing everything, right? And then we label it, we present it to them, and then we just keep practicing it. So for me specifically, what I would do, kindergarten was the youngest age that I taught with the elementary school, is we worked a lot on breath. And then I talked about their space, and I talked about soft palate. I talked about the sternum, because we always wanted our sternum up and not down. And they could feel and understand that. And so I just would work on those simple things. And then I would start to talk later on, 4th, 5th grade, about starting to have a little more placement and what that means and what is this area and the sinuses. And then you start to label as you go. I'm using it. I'd say, do you feel that area? Can you go nee, 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 nee? And they go nee, 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 nee. I'm like, yeah, do you feel all that in there? And, any of you ever get a sinus infection? Like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that space hurts when that happens. But that's what we use when we sing. Oh, okay. And so you just tell them as you're going along. But I would start to really label as they were getting older. My students left elementary school in 4th grade. And some of them never would sing again. They either had to go band, orchestra, choir. And so I tried to get as much in by 4th grade as I possibly could, because I knew for some kids, that's the end of their singing career. That's it. Even though I only had them, in general, it was general music, unless they were in my extracurricular ensemble, choir ensemble. So labeling it, but start simple, you know, sternum, you know, talk about the lungs, talk about the soft palate, and use those over and over and over, and then start adding more things into it. You know, the vocal folds, how they feel, but understanding all of that. That's how I would do that. Talk a little bit about tips for singing diction and enunciation. Well, that is the tongue and the lips right there, right? The biggest thing that I had talked about too was the tension in the tongue, right? This part of right there, that's the bottom of your tongue. And for most of you, if you feel it right now, it's probably kind of tense, right? And especially for me, I've been on call since 9:30 this morning. I've been talking now for several hours. I took a half an hour for lunch, and I went downstairs in my house and I talked to my kids. So I still kept talking, right? This part right here, right? And that's where the tension starts, right there, underneath. And so for diction and enunciation, you want to keep the tongue very light and not tense. Forward placement helps with diction. Backwards placement, not so much. You don't get clarity, which is one thing I said to Henry, you know, with the tone at one point in time. So you always want it forward. That'll give you more diction and more clarity. And Sylvia Mcnair, who's a local soprano here in Indiana, one of her things she always said is, we talk so much about the vowels, but we never talk about consonants, right? We just all of a sudden drop them in at the end, right? We're so focused on the vowels. The consonants are what gives life. You know, otherwise we're singing, oh, a, u, e, I, o, e, I, right? I know it's the national anthem because that's the melody, but I have no idea what you just said, right? And we hear beautiful vowels, but we don't hear, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? And one of the things that I always like to say to the kids, because most of them know it, is I love to use Julie Andrews as an example because she has such incredible diction. I mean, most of them have either seen Mary Poppins or The Sound of Music. You know, let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. You know every word she says, right? She really enunciates that. And so to focus still on vowel and love our vowels, but to not be afraid to put in that diction, to put in those things and to speak it. Theatrical speaking of it, you know, I see the moon, it's shining from far away, or, you know, kusi mama, you know, speak it and enunciate it, and then make sure while you're doing it, you're really relaxed. Kusi mama, you know, I see the moon is shining from far. You know, there is no tension here, but I'm still getting diction. So hopefully, Anna, that helps. Let's see. I take singing completely out of the equation. I do this at all levels. So many come in with complete misconceptions of what singing is, so I take that word out. Yep. We make tons of noises. They love Mrs. Doubtfire. I'm glad some people even know what Mrs. Doubtfire is anymore. Hello! You know, we actually have one of our choir directors, Mary Evers, who helps with our high school. She walks in a room and she says that all the time. So for most of us, it's be Mrs. Evers, you know. Helps find natural connection to tone and breath. Any of those types of things, totally. Those are totally those tricks that you have in your toolbox that help get that breath connected with that space feeling, that feeling of openness, that resonant space. Yeah, so let's see, other messages. Oh, what should I do when we're in the middle of performance and the kid's adrenaline is kicking in and the tone is starting to go south? None of us
not
have
that ever
ever
happened.
been there. No, that's never happened to any of us, right? First of all, you prep for it, get ready for it, right? because one of the things that I always say to our kids is practice makes permanent. And so we want to practice whatever we're going to do. And yes, the adrenaline does get going, especially for the younger kids. The younger kids. The other thing I'm going to give you a tip on is for your tempos for whatever you're doing. When you get to a performance, they're going to want to go faster and so you probably should already plan on your performance tempos for younger students to be faster. And again, why do they want to go faster? It is because of their heartbeat. Children's heartbeats are naturally faster than ours, right? And so when their adrenaline gets going, it's going, and their natural beat is a lot faster. So just plan on, for the younger kids, your tempo is going to want to be a little faster. And I always have to remember that when we do our big pieces together and the little kids come in and sing with the big kids, because I could take the big kids slower on these big pieces, you know, and all the directors are like, Josh, you got to go faster. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Because we got first graders and kindergartners in here singing. So practicing, setting things up and making sure, okay, guys, now, you know, like I had said at one point with, in one of our conducting things, even if I'm standing on my head, you don't do this, right? Right. You know, putting it back on them, making sure they are ready to go. Now, you guys know you're professionals. Like, you're professionals. You're going to go out there and you're going to sing like a professional. And how do we do that? And then, but your gesture has to mean something. You know, this part of my hand, there are sometimes in rehearsal, I'm like, do you know what that means? Like, stop. Good. And if I'm doing this at you, oh, we're too much. Right. Right. You know, making sure you have clear, defined actions that they know what they mean. So when you're in a situation, you give them that and they know. The other thing, you know, is the look, giving them the look. I think I've burned through a couple of kids' heads with the looks I've given, probably. Lauren's laughing at this, but it's probably true. It has been, yeah, a death stare like Darth Vader. So I think everything you can do to set yourself up for success is the biggest thing. But when they start to push, you got to back them off. You've got to back them off. The other thing is, you can't get tension in your body. Because as soon as you get tension in your body, they're going to get tense too, because they're reflecting you, right? They're reacting to you. So you have to be very, very calm and just relax. The more you relax, the more they're going to relax. But that's not our first instinct. Our first instinct is, holy crap, the wheels are coming off the wagon. How do I hold them together? You know, and you just start to go into survival mode. And your survival mode has to be chill. You know, okay, we got this. Stay with you, accompanists, stay with me. You guys follow. Right? Nope, follow. But you know, you have to chill, and that will put their anxiety level down too. If you're chill, then they'll chill. So we have had those runaways, haven't we, Mrs. Southard? And it's just like one little kid who's like, I'm the star, right? And they go, and your job is to get them back, right? And sometimes they're not looking at you. They're looking at mom and dad, who are literally going like this, right? And you have to do whatever you can to pull them back or get everybody with them. And that you're going to have to make that decision, which way to go. How can you do that? There's no right or wrong. It's where you are in the situation, but always remain calm and relaxed, because they're going to reflect that. You're going to reflect that. Could you discuss the process and importance of analyzing and instructing through repertoire? Geez, Matthew, could you give me any bigger topic to talk about right now? With a number of different levels in ICC, I know that there are different educational goals tiered to performance. Yes, you're exactly right. Instructing through repertoire. You can teach what you need to through almost any piece, right? Even in the advanced choirs, I am using a really good unison piece to work on tone. We always sing unison together. So, you know, how you use those. In multi-part pieces, you know, people can hide, and a 6-part piece may become a 7-part piece because someone is off on their own, and you don't quite hear it in the mix, you know. The importance of instructing through repertoire is that's what we do. We use the repertoire to teach, and so you need to have your goals in mind as you're choosing your repertoire. With the Indianapolis Children's Choir, Ruth has done a great job of you know, we really follow the Kodai process. And so, you know, with younger choirs, it's, you know, quarter rest, quarter note, half note, 8th notes. Those are our big things. We're working on, we moved from sol la mi to mi re do a few years ago because of John Feyerabend and meshing our preparatory and foundations with our first steps program. And so we lay all that out. And so then we're looking for both repertoire that does that, but also repertoire that fits what we want to talk about this season, whatever themes or wherever we're going with things. When you get into the advanced repertoire, where I tend to live, I'm really looking for great text and wonderful part writing. And then off of that, then I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to be working on this stuff. Most of my kids, we have 5 levels of theory. Most of my kids are level 3, level 4. Level 4 theory is entry college level theory. So we're working on a lot of stuff, you know, minor scales and minor triads and dissonance and all these accidentals and all, you know, we're working on all these different things and complex rhythms and multimeter things. And so then, yeah, I'm looking for those things, but a lot of that tends to naturally happen. I know I'm probably not giving you the easiest or best answer, but that sort of just happens because it's kind of behind in the back of my brain when I'm looking for things, what I'm looking for. But yes, every level has its goals. And again, for us, we are Kodai based. And so we have those goals. It is very easy for us to see what those goals are in every level and to make sure we're using whatever repertoire we picked to get to those goals. Mrs. Southard, would you agree with that? Would you add anything to that?
No, I think that I'm glad Matthew is pointing that out because we really don't have to separate, you know, each teacher, each director is a little different, but we choose our repertoire very carefully, like Josh is saying. And so you don't necessarily have to stop your rehearsal and be like, I'm going to teach you something now, and then teach something on the board. That's not what we're doing. Yeah, we might be playing some games or something that also fit that concept, but it's in the repertoire too. And so it can be a smooth rehearsal and you're working it in through the performance pieces. And I think that's why it's an enriching experience for kids to be in ICC. It's not segmented, choppy. They know that it's one continuous thing. Here we are, we're at choir. In the end, we're at a concert. And through that process, we learned a bunch of stuff and we're awesome. It's just smooth.
The other thing is to always remember the voice of a child is expanding. So what we're singing at the advanced level and their range is not what the 1st through 3rd graders should be singing. And a lot of times that's one of the hardest things is picking repertoire that sits in the right register for a student. Because you're going to basically be butting your head against a wall if you don't pick it in the right register. If you pick something that sits down around, you know, the first space F and goes down to middle C and all of that, you're like, I can't get a nice tone. Well, there's a reason. You're living in chest voice, you know, but if you pick something that lives up in the middle of the staff with the C above middle C and B and A and G, F, but then goes maybe up to a D, sometimes an E, but you live in that area, you're going to have a more success because the tone's going to be better because you're engaging head voice. Now, can you dip down into the lower area? Yes. Totally. But if that's where most of it lives, just like I am not a big believer in SAB music. Why? Because the range of all of it, the soprano, alto, and the bass baritone is squished. The sopranos never go maybe above a D, sometimes a C. The altos have the most boring line of singing G, F, E, maybe a D. They sing 4 notes. And the baritone bass lives on the break, right? They put them right on the break of a B, C, D. And it's right on their break. And the boys do this the whole time and they're trying to hit those things. It's better for you to sing SATB and have some, and have the boys that are becoming tenors sing tenor, or sing SSA music and put the boys on the alto line, or really the better line is the second soprano line for them and have them sing it down the octave. You know, don't go by labels, but that's a whole nother segment. But it does go into, Laura, you asked about diphthongs, so I'm going to do that one really quick, but then changing voices. Stephanie, I'm going to get to that. Diphthongs, give them the purest vowel. Like when I first started working at ICC, was always spelled A-Y. And I'm like, why are you putting A-Y on the board? And they're like, well, that's A. And I'm like, yeah, that's A. So which part of that do you want me to sing? And so I actually spell E-H. There's no diphthong to that, right? Anytime you do those things. So you have to also be prepared when singing through music that has a diphthong. You have to know what you want, and you have to tell your students what you want, because they are going to give you a diphthong. And again, any of you from Kentucky, I am very sorry. But whenever I have done honor choirs in Kentucky, that is the biggest thing in Kentucky. There is a diphthong there that is just the hardest thing to get rid of. And you have to be very precise with the vowel you want and to keep it very pure. So yeah, diphthongs, horrible. So stay away from them as much as you can. Have it in your music ready to go, and say, I flat out will say to the kids, you know, whatever a thing is with a diphthong, and I'm like, this is how I want you to say it. It's going to feel weird. It's going to sound weird. But when you sing it, it's going to be the most beautiful thing you've ever heard. So have a plan. Have a roadmap. Stephanie, changing voices. I'm teaching at the very, very start of the change, before they have a clue anything is happening to them.
They haven't had they call it the gross and development video. They haven't even seen that video. So, so yeah, and trying to explain to them that children sing high. You're still a child, you know, you have high notes. Don't get rid of those high notes yet, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. See, for me, I mean, I had some of that issue too, because I was a male voice, you know, elementary teacher. Now, I tell you, I was the one who had to go in the room with the boys because there were only 2 men in my building, myself and the janitor, right? So I was always the one in there for the video. Yeah, that's really a bonding moment between me and my boy students, right? Anyway, one of the things that I know a lot of choirs have gone to is saying youth rather than children, so they feel a little older with it. But for me, yeah, I had kids all the time that were like, I'm gonna sing down here. And I'm like, no, you're not. But I'm a very sarcastic, straightforward person too. You know, I'm like, I'm sorry, can you go, oh, and they're like, I'm like, sorry, you can't sing that note, but you can sing this, you know. The other thing, especially for boys, is to give them good vocal models and role models to do. And that's why I always bring up, I'm a little out of date now, but, you know, Usher, JT, the Bee Gees, you know, they all sing in their head voice. It's all their high voice, right? And they all make a lot of money, and it's not thought to be unmasculine or unmanly. And so that's the big thing for them to understand. And the thing I always love to tell the guys is that as they're starting this or they're going, you keep doing this, you're going to be able to sing more notes than I can, because they're going to be able to sing all the notes you can sing, Stephanie, plus they're going to sing all the extra notes that they gain. And then they can sing whatever they want. So it's setting them up to be like, this is a cool thing. This is something that's really, really cool.
I love that approach. I love that. That's how I operate.
So that's always what I've done. But again, I can't speak from a female teacher's experience with it, because I haven't lived that. I can look at them as a guy and say, look, this is. My normal thing though is that I do have the changed voice and I can't sing in my head voice all day long. That's always my issue. So I can't give them the model they need all the time. So anyway, so I have an advantage.
That was great. That was great. I was
looking
looking for those words like youth and you have more notes than I do. Those kinds of things I think are meaningful and powerful to kids. Thank you. That was great.
And then, like I said, give them also some anchors, some, the King singers, they look like guys, you want to put guys in front of them that look like, what I'm saying, right? Let's see, I think it was the genie, the guy, the Broadway genie from Aladdin. He hit some crazy high notes, so they see these big buff guys that look like football players doing this stuff and they're like, I'll do that, so those things too help. Changing voice, thank you, good things. Previous concert programs, we can get that too. We can put that in the space. Lauren, we can look at doing some prior programs.
And also the harmony and sequence book has all those suggested things in it, right?
Yes, it does. It has a whole list basically of the Indianapolis Children's Choir library.
So if you go to our website, and I'll try to find where the link is, make it a little easier for you, but read around on the website, and then our harmony and sequence book has like suggested pieces. I mean, it's a little older, but that's still a great place to start.
Thank you.
Matthew asked one of those very sensitive questions that we're in the world that we're living in, where someone does not identify as a gender. And so, yes, we have had that more from because we live in the treble world. For me, everybody sings in their high voice until 9th grade. We haven't had that issue because they all know they sing with that voice. It's when we get into the high school ensemble in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And we sing which part is most comfortable for you. Really where it becomes an issue for us is uniform. What uniform do they wear? Do they wear the uniform that the boys wear, or do they wear the uniform that the girls wear? And that's been our biggest thing, is what uniform they wear. But with voice instruction, no matter what, Matthew, and I think we don't do enough talking about it, is there is a voice change happening during adolescence of both male and female. So there's a voice change period across the board. And we have to remember that through the vocal folds, through this area, there are hormones being pumped through that. And so as ladies are growing during adolescence, as men are growing during adolescence, there are hormones that are affecting this. And we need to be aware of that. So talking about a voice change period across the whole board is always a good thing. We tend not to, again, address the females have a voice change because it's not as drastic. It's not when the boy, with the boys, we're like, good morning, good morning, good morning. They're like, oh, your voice changed, right? It's gradual and it's not as much. You know, they might settle down to be a mezzo soprano rather than a soprano, or they might settle down and be an alto rather than mezzo soprano. You know, their voice adjusts, but it's not, I used to be a soprano and now I'm a bass. You know, it's not that. So I think, Matthew, I always address that there's a change happening across the board with everybody. Sometimes it's a little more drastic, and to help them through that change, that they're going to feel that change. Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. Yes, Danielle Steele actually was my classmate. We were in college together at Butler. So I know that she has done great work on that and is able to talk a lot about that. I also know there have been some great articles in the Choral Journal lately about that and how to deal with that. But as far as the younger singer goes, they're feeling a lot of this out. But for us at the children's choir, we have, because we live, again, in the treble world where everyone's singing in the same range, we haven't dealt as much with which part they sing. Rather, it's been more which outfit they wear for us. All right, Mrs. Southard, it's 2 o'clock. Anyone have any other questions they would like answered from me today? I'm coming to you actually from my son's bedroom. This is where I barricade myself when my children are home. So this is my son's bedroom. I will share his artwork with you. There's my son's artwork on the wall. There it is. So anyway, this is the only place where I could go with a door that could get through. Squirrel moment. Thank you, Carrie. Yes, I like that squirrel. That's a good squirrel. Awesome.
I have one last thing, and I hope it doesn't kick us into a really long thing, but I guess it's kind of a question, but it's more like, I don't know, discussion. I've found that as I've really the last 3 years learned so much more about the ICC and your curriculum, and then reading the people that branch off of ICC or people that you've taken from, and you kind of mentioned it in both the pedagogy and the tone production video, but just it's so important that especially young teachers have a sound in their ear of what they want their choir to sound like. And I think when I first started teaching, I kind of was like, okay, I mean, I think ICC sounds good, but that's not what my choir's gonna sound like. And so just being really mindful of that, even like kind of just evaluating every year because like if there's always a new class coming in, like I guess if it's the question, it's like how you develop that sound, because if you don't have that going in, I've like looked back and you can catch yourself just like pulling instead of having that clear roadmap and going like, I know what these first graders are capable of. I can hear the sound that I've heard ICC's first grade choir, but I know what my first grade choir. So just, I don't know if that even makes sense, but from doing all the reading and stuff from what you guys say, I keep thinking that like it's just so important that I have that.
So here's my suggestion with that. So first of all, your like my adult choir, my adult church choir is consistent. I'm adding a few new people here and there, but it's the same from year to year. My ICC ensemble is not. I graduate half of my kids into the high school program, and then I bring in another new set. So there's a anchor, but then I've got a whole new set to bring on top. So is that choir the next year going to sound a little different than the choir year before? Yes, it is. Are my first graders this year going to sound different than my first graders last year? Yes. Why? Because everybody's voice is different. Yeah. Everybody has their own unique sound, right? But what you have to have is that roadmap of the placement and the space and the breath support. And I sort of think of it as like, if you're working as a potter, right? And you know you're going to make a vase. you know you're going to make a vase, you have it in your mind, but as you're working with the clay, all of a sudden you're like, I think there needs to be a little bump here. I was going to go totally smooth, but I feel it kind of happening, and I'm going to flare out here. You know you're making a vase still, right? But you're feeling where the clay is taking you, and I think that's the sound. You know where you're going to go. End product is a vase. But the clay is telling you, I need to do this and this to become the vase. And so that's so yes, you want good vocal models for your kids and anchors that they can go, that's a good sound. That's where I want to go. That's a good, healthy model. Those are things that you want to have for them. But to say, sound just like that, you don't need to do that. And never feel pressure to. Your choirs should not sound like my choirs, because I'm not you and you're not me. Do we want to emulate some of the same stuff? Yes. You know, like I said, I went up and I spent several days with Zemfira and her choir, and I love her choir sound. I even took a tour up and took my choir to Zemfira and had her work with them. And I pull those notes out all the time. Can I create what Zemfira did? No. But can I learn from it, and does it help me on my journey of my tone? Yeah. And that's what we're all about. We're never going to sound the same. And you know, again, art is subjective. What I think sounds good may not sound good to you. That doesn't mean my sound is right and your sound is wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong and you're right and I'm wrong. It's subjective. And so we have to allow ourselves for that. But as long as they're doing it, the key things are they're doing it healthy. They have healthy tone. There's no tension, that it's properly placed. It has good space. All of those things. You know, there are some professional singers out there I just don't like to listen to. I just don't like their sound. They're not a bad singer. It's just my taste, right? And so that's the same thing with the tone. So the biggest thing is, though, you need to understand how to get there. And that's what having those anchors is for, to say, okay, here's that model. How do I get there? I know I do this, this, and this. And then when you do it with your kids, you're like, yeah, you actually, let's go this way a little bit. It sounds better with you. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. Thank you.
Good. Good. You're welcome. All right, Mrs. Southern.
Okay. Are we good?
We are good.
I will stop recording. Here I go.
Okay. No more.